well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. So glad you're with me on the program today. We're going to be talking with Edgar and Tion from the group Guns for Everyone out in Colorado. You may not have heard of this group, not one of the big headline-generating organizations, but they've been around for a while, and they're doing some really incredible work. They're also working on a new ballot initiative, hoping to put before Colorado voters in 2024, dealing with the right to carry in a state in which marijuana has been legalized both medicinally and recreationally. We'll get to that in just 1 second. Before we do, though, let's talk about this for a moment. Biden's America, it is crushing us. You've got companies laying off tens of thousands of workers, one after the other. Americans working two jobs just to get by. Inflation pushing hardworking families to the brink, as you well know. And a digital dollar could be coming down the pipeline to completely destroy our way of life. The truth is, you need a plan. You know it, and I know it. And that is why you should call Goldco. So you can diversify your savings and investments with gold and silver before things get worse. They're a six-time Inc. 5000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, with thousands of five-star reviews, and they've helped people like you and me place over $1 billion in gold and silver. Right now, they're offering up to $10,000 in free silver while supplies last, and if you call them today, qualified callers will get a free Ronald Reagan half-ounce silver coin. So don't wait. Call Goldco at 855-412-3806 today. That's 855-412-3806. And now, let's turn our attention to today's interview with Edgar and Tion of Guns for Everyone. All about this ballot initiative they're trying to put before Colorado voters next November. Take a look and a listen. Edgar, thanks so much for coming to the program. It's great to meet you. I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about a couple of things, honestly. We'll get to the ballot initiative in just a second. But for folks who are maybe unfamiliar with Guns for Everyone, tell us a little bit about the group and what your primary mission has been.
Yeah, so Guns for Everyone's been around since 2010. And really our primary mission has been to provide free concealed carry classes to the masses and primarily as a protest, right? Primarily as an activism. It's kind of silly that in the freest nation on earth with the Constitution and the Second Amendment to that Constitution, we're having to ask the government for permission, and then in many circumstances having to pay the government for the permission to defend yourself. So it's kind of silly. And even in states with constitutional carry, right? Yeah, sure, constitutional carry, but if you want to do this, you must get the permit. And if you want to do that, you must get the permit. So the free classes are really primarily as a protest to that. It's silly that we have to pay for freedoms.
Yeah, it is silly. And, we're chipping away at this, right? I mean, we've seen some states like Indiana say, all right, we're going to, end the fees for applying for a carry permit, which is good to see. That's obviously not the case in Colorado. But how often are you putting these classes on and what kind of interest do you get? Who shows up for these classes?
Yeah, as far as who shows up to the classes is quite a diverse crowd. Professionals, doctors, engineers, blue collar, white collar, teenagers, kids with their parents. I mean, it's really all over the place of the humans that show up to our. We've instructed over 100,000 students in the state of Colorado alone. We've done classes in Florida and Wisconsin and in California. We also provide training in Mexico, not for the concealed carry, but live fire training in Mexico as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty diverse crowd. We put on roughly about anywhere between 6 and 9 classes a week.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a pretty full-time endeavor that we've created.
That's awesome. I got to have you back just to talk about your activism in Mexico, because that to me is fascinating given the restrictive nature of gun ownership there. But, we do see these stories about armed self-defense groups, villagers who are, getting guns illegally to protect themselves against cartels who also illegally possess firearms. So will you come back in the new year so we can touch on that and just kind of delve into that in detail? Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is also going to be an interesting conversation because Guns for Everyone, you're trying to put a ballot initiative before voters in Colorado next November. And, while this is a Colorado-specific initiative, I think it's fair to say that there are probably a lot of other states around the country where something like this is is needed, right? So what is the situation in Colorado when it comes to issuing concealed carry licenses in a state where marijuana has been legalized both recreationally and medicinally?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, Colorado was the first state that legalized it completely. We're the first state to do it, and ever since then, the humans that consume that product, marijuana, have been in this really weird situation, in this limbo where I may need it medically, or I may just do it recreationally because of freedoms, and the ability to defend myself is not there. So a lot of these people are in a very tough predicament, as they have to pick and choose between freedoms. Do I defend myself, or do I partake in my vice of choice? Something that people who consume alcoholic beverages don't have to deal with, right? People who consume alcohol, it's a vice, it's a recreational thing, but yet they're able to own guns. They're able to apply for a concealed carry and obtain the concealed carry permit, and have the ability to defend themselves and responsibly still consume their vice of choice. Not so much for the marijuana users. So that's kind of what we want to end. Is we want to end that. We want to essentially have marijuana users be treated just like alcohol beverages users, people who consume alcohol. So that's kind of the goal here in the state of Colorado.
Gotcha. And, look, I mean, I think you would agree that ideally this is something that needs to be addressed at the federal level. We are talking about a DEA classification. And if that can be addressed, I think that solves the problem. You've got legislation like the Gun Rights and Marijuana Act that is pending in Congress, only has like 3 co-sponsors, unfortunately. But it basically says if you live in a state where marijuana has been legalized, either recreationally, medicinally, or both, you can consume cannabis and own a gun without running afoul of federal law. But absent any, movement on Capitol Hill, what would this ballot initiative do for Colorado gun owners or Colorado marijuana users who want to be a lawful gun owner?
Well, unfortunately, at a federal level, right? If it was an issue of the DEA or the ATF, there's still a small chance that problems could arise. But at least that takes it away from local cops from enforcing. It's kind of just the same way that marijuana has been treated here in the state of Colorado, where local resources are not being used for criminalizing humans that want to partake in that freedom. So that's kind of what we're hoping with this stuff. And also, obviously, we're hoping to grow momentum so this changes across the nation, because you're absolutely right? This is a 10th Amendment issue. As well as it is a Second Amendment issue. It's silly that the federal government at this point, 2023, hasn't done away with this. It's kind of weird that we're still having this conversation about this stuff. So it's definitely, in my opinion, obviously a step in the right direction, and hopefully builds momentum and other states kind of catch on to this.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this in my preview when we were getting ready to introduce you, that, this is becoming an issue in other states. In Oklahoma, for instance, you do have sheriffs who are denying concealed carry licenses to individuals who have a medical marijuana license. In Arkansas, the legislature actually passed a law that said sheriffs can't do that. They cannot use a medical marijuana license as a basis to deny someone a concealed carry license. And now the ATF's gotten involved, right? They've sent a letter to the Arkansas authorities saying, well, listen, you guys use concealed carry licenses as a substitute for a NICS check, which means that, there could be unlawful users of drugs, quote unquote, who are purchasing firearms with a concealed carry license. And they're trying to put the kibosh on that. So this is an issue. Primarily, it's an issue, I think, in, states where we do have a strong tradition of gun ownership and the right to carry. But I'm with you. I think that this is an issue that really we need to be talking more about. I mean, just from a personal perspective, I have a wife with stage 4 lung cancer. Cannabis has been very helpful in some folks dealing with chemotherapy. Why should she have to give up either, her right to keep and bear arms, or not use something that might help her keep food down, help deal with nausea, help gain her appetite? And these are questions that hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans are having to deal with. So this is a big issue, right? So this week, you took it sounds like the first real formal step towards putting this on the ballot. You had a meeting with the Legislative Council staff in the Office of Legislative Legal Services. How did that go?
It went well. That's really merely a formality, I guess. It is a step in the process, but they're mostly there to kind of advise you and give you pointers and potential pitfalls that you might fall into with your particular verbiage that you used. So they don't really decide yay or nay, this is approved. They just basically just give you guidelines. This is what we believe could be misconstrued. This is things that you should probably think about so that you don't get denied when you go to the Secretary of State, because it's the Secretary of State that ultimately decides whether or not they're going to approve the language so that you can move forward in this ballot initiative. So that's the real next step. That's the ones that actually approve or deny our motion.
Okay, and it sounds like the folks of the Legislative Council did have some recommendations to sort of tweak the language of the ballot initiative. Are you on board with the changes that they proposed?
There was one of them that made sense because it would then enter into tackling two issues, right? There was one of them just getting rid of federal law completely in the entire CRS. That wasn't our intention. So pinpointing that to just the marijuana or the substance abuse issue, I think that was a better way of doing it. So yeah, they definitely did have a few pointers where we agreed on. And there was other stuff that was just grammatical stuff, and some of it was just miscommunication. It didn't translate when we sent the file, and but overall, I mean, they didn't have anything major to say. We've done this before, right? This is our second time. I wish we were successful the first time, but we've done this before, so they didn't have a lot to say about it. But the stuff they did have to say was not, in my opinion, incorrect.
Okay.
I think they looked at it the correct way.
So you say this isn't your first rodeo. What happened the last time around? Did the petition get approved, or was it denied by the Secretary of State?
Yeah, no. Everything was approved. We were in the signature gathering scenario. One of my downfalls, I guess, in all of this is that I'm not a consumer of marijuana. I don't even consume alcohol. So I made the mistake of not connecting with people who know about the language. But I say pot user. That's not something that a lot of people like in that industry. They like to use the marijuana user instead. So it's just a lot of my ignorance. Also, this was very closely together with the legalization of marijuana. So I think people were still getting over the fact that marijuana was legal, and people were still mad and shaking their fists that it had happened. And now we were putting on a ballot this initiative to allow them to obtain their permit as well. So I think there was a few mistakes that were made. And most of it, I have to admit, it was just basically a lot of ignorance on my part, stuff that we learned from, and we're on the right track now.
Well, and that's what's important, right? I mean, we learn from our failures and we go forward. And so this second time around, do you feel pretty confident that, now that, again, legalization is a done deal in Colorado, right? For better or worse. And I know that there are folks who believe that this has contributed to the increase in crime that we've seen across the state of Colorado. Whatever your feelings about marijuana and whether or not it should be legal, to me, this does seem like a common sense measure, right? The law is what it is. And there are people who are unable to exercise a fundamental civil right because they have to pick and choose, right? Or they can't use marijuana recreationally. They can't use marijuana medicinally because they refuse to give up that fundamental civil right. Is that an argument that you think is going to resonate with both gun owners and marijuana users in Colorado?
Yeah, I think on the marijuana front, I think people are just over it. It's to a point where it's been normalized to the point where it doesn't even matter, right? So it's in Colorado, again, for better or for worse, we're used to the smell. If you go downtown Denver, you know what it's going to smell like. And ultimately, I think more people are starting to understand, and maybe COVID had something to do with this, but I think a lot of people, regardless of where they're on the aisle, on which side of the aisle they're on, they're understanding they're only as free as they allow their neighbors to be. So I think we are headed in the right direction. Colorado historically has been a relatively libertarian state, and maybe not politically, but mentally has been really a purple state. Only recently did it really turn full blue. But that's only pockets, right? That's only pockets. The rest of the state, it's still pretty purple. It's not red. It's not blue. So I think most of Coloradans will understand what we're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah. Well, and according to the Crime Prevention Research Center, Colorado is one of the highest rates of concealed carry in the nation. Now, again, it's hard to tell when you've got, constitutional carry states, but in terms of the percentage of the population with an active concealed carry license, I think Colorado is like, what, second or third per capita in the country?
Yeah, I mean, and people unfortunately equate us to our recent anti-gun bills that have happened. But again, Colorado is historically a gun-toting state. I mean, we forget in 2013, Democrats in Pueblo, they recalled their senators because of anti-gun legislation. And Pueblo County and the city of Pueblo is largely primarily a Democratic city and a Democratic county. And they were the ones that said, we don't agree with this stuff. Yes, we might be blue, but we're gun-toting blue. So we're counting on a lot of those people who understand that you can have both. You can be on the blue side and on the red side and just love freedom one way or another.
Yeah.
Or not be part of either of them.
Right. I was on the ground in Colorado for that recall election. I was there at the watch party when the results were coming in. So, yeah, I'm well aware. A lot of other folks might have forgotten, but I'm well aware that there is a lot of bipartisan support for the right to keep and bear arms, which is one reason I think why the anti-gun forces in Colorado have not been able to go as far as they would like. I mean, things have gotten worse over the past couple of years, but the gun control advocates haven't gotten everything that's been on their wish list. And I think in part because there are still some Democrats out there who support the Second Amendment. So what is the next step now? You've had this meeting with the legislative staff group to help kind of tweak the language. Do you then present this to the Secretary of State? What's the next step in the process?
No, it's essentially starting back all over again. Essentially, we haven't received an actual number on so we haven't gotten the informal approval from the Legislative Council saying that we agree on the changes. So just tweaking the verbiage, resubmitting it, and then they simply give us a number so that we can then take it to the Secretary of State, and then we'll have a hearing. I'm assuming at this point sometime mid-January. It's a relatively quick process. I'll give them that. I'm not a huge fan of the government, but in terms of the bureaucratic process, it's actually pretty quick. I submitted this the second week in December, and we already had the first meeting, so it's actually pretty quick process. So I'm hoping that mid-January we'll have that Secretary of State hearing and get the approval, and then start collecting signatures. Okay,
so then how long will you have to collect how many signatures?
We have 6 months, but it's election year, so we really definitely want to get it way before the 6 months.
Yeah.
So usually, if I'm not mistaken, 6 months that we have to collect 125-ish thousand signatures. Our goal is really to get more like 150, 160. Obviously, to compensate for all of the people that are doing it on maliciously and not using the correct information.
Yeah, right. But signing Donald Duck or whatever. Yeah. So, and I'd love to have you back once the Secretary of State approves this, and then you start the signature gathering process. I'd love to have you back on to talk about how you're doing this. But it sounds like, again, you talked about learning some lessons from the last go round. Do you plan on reaching out and engaging with, dispensaries and gun stores to try to put these petitions out for customers to sign?
Yeah, that's kind of the goal, is to reach out to the dispensaries. A few of them helped us out last time. Now there's a lot more. A lot more gun stores are open to this as well, but also using conventions and venues like that. Colorado has a big 420 event. I don't partake, so I don't go to these events. So
that wouldn't even cross my mind.
You're correct. So I'm gonna have to set my discomfort aside and go to these events. And also, technology has changed a lot, even in the 10-ish years from the beginning of the marijuana movement here in the state of Colorado. Well, the recent one that got everything passed. technology's changed. The way we use technology has changed. So that's going to be an advantage to us this go around as well. Is just simply the way we consume information is a lot easier and a lot more digestible. So we have an advantage this time.
Are you anticipating vocal pushback from gun control groups in the state?
Not only gun control groups, but unfortunately, people who claim to be on our side. It happened last time as well, where some gun groups here in the state of Colorado were vocal about supporting our decision to move forward with the stuff. So we're expecting from anti-gunners, and unfortunately, we're expecting it from people who support the gun movement or gun ownership to push back because of the marijuana issue. So we're expecting both.
Yeah, that is frustrating. And I think it's one of the reasons why we haven't seen things like the Gun Rights and Marijuana Act attract a lot of co-sponsors in Congress because, and I'm going to simplify it, but, I think a lot of Democrats don't want to do anything that's pro-gun. And I think a lot of Republicans don't want to do anything that's seen as pro-pot, right? So if you can put, again, those sort of biases aside and say, again, this is the world that we live in, right? And so how do we ensure that people have access to their rights without, criminalizing something that, frankly, again, is already legal at the state level? Maybe it's just the inner libertarian in me. The arguments against this just don't really resonate with me, but I know that they're there, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it in the months ahead. But Edgar, if we've got any folks out there who are listening or watching and they want to get involved, they want to help out, they live in Colorado and they'd like to volunteer, how can they lend their support to the cause right now?
So as of right now, the best way to do it is gunsforeveryone.com. If you go to our website, there's a way to contact us. You can follow us on the on all of the social medias under Guns for Everyone, primarily Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can follow us under Guns for Everyone. Get a hold of us there. And obviously, shamelessly, down the line, we're going to need donations as well to kind of help support this. So whoever wants to help out with that. But best way to get a hold of us is either through our website, gunsforeveryone.com, social media is Guns for Everyone, and send us a message because we are going to need the help. Absolutely, we're going to need the help.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking a couple minutes to talk with us about this today. We'll definitely be talking more in the new year. And Edgar Antillon, thank you so much for joining us here on Cam & Company.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
My thanks to Edgar for joining us on the program. Looking forward to following what's going on with that ballot initiative in the new year as well. All right, before we get to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day and our recidivist report, let's talk about this once again. Biden's America absolutely crushing us with companies laying off tens of thousands of workers one after the other. Plenty of Americans working two jobs just to get by. Inflation pushing hardworking families to the brink, as you well know. And again, a digital dollar that can be coming down the pipeline to completely destroy our way of life. Truth is, you need a plan. You know it and I know it. And that's why you should call Goldco. So you can diversify your savings and investments with gold and silver before things get worse. They're a 6-time Inc. 5000 winner, 2022 Company of the Year, thousands of 5-star reviews, and they've helped people like you and me place over $1 billion in gold and silver. They're offering up to $10,000 in free silver while supplies last. And if you call them today, qualified callers will get a free Ronald Reagan half-ounce silver coin. So don't wait. Call Goldco at 855-412-3806 today. That's 855-412-3806. And now let's turn our attention to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We will start there with a case out of Ohio where a man has been sentenced to probation in the non-fatal shooting of a 16-year-old girl. That's right. I guess this is so bizarre to me. This is in Columbus, Ohio, where, by the way, the city attorney, the mayor, trying to pass all of these local gun control ordinances that they say are necessary to fight violent crime. Not really. What they're trying to do is undo firearm preemption in Ohio. If you really want to fight violent crime, I don't know, how about provide some actual consequences for violent crimes? 19-year-old Devin Howard sentenced to 3 years probation and the completion of a risk reduction program after he pleaded guilty to shooting a 16-year-old girl in May of this year. It was May 11th when a 16-year-old girl was shot in her right arm in the South Linden neighborhood of Columbus, Ohio. She was taken to a local hospital. Non-life-threatening injuries, thankfully. Witnesses told police that Howard was responsible for the shooting, which reportedly took place inside of a home where multiple children were present. Howard pleaded guilty to one felony count of aggravated assault. And again, the 19-year-old sentenced to 3 years probation for that violent crime. I don't want to hear any more talk about, we need these local ordinances here regarding safe storage. We need these local ordinances regarding lost or stolen. You want to reduce violent crime? Ensure that violent criminals face consequences for their actions. And that did not happen here. Today's armed citizen story from LaGrange, Georgia, where police say a man shot and killed the suspect in self-defense during a robbery attempt in the Georgia city. Happened Wednesday night. The suspect / victim, identified as Jonathan Daniel. Department said officers responded to a home on Garfield Street in LaGrange where they found that Daniel had suffered a gunshot wound and was later pronounced deceased. Detectives, during the course of their investigation, discovered that Daniel and another suspect named Antonio Stevens tried to rob a man at gunpoint. They say Daniel pointed his gun at the victim, which is when the victim pulled out a gun of his own and fired at Daniel, shooting and killing him. Stevens was arrested yesterday, charged with felony murder in the death of Daniel, the homeowner who acted in self-defense, not facing any charges at the moment. The investigation does continue. We'll keep our eyes open for any updates as they become available. And finally today, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing, a Florida Wildlife Commission officer and a Good Samaritan who saved a man after his car ended up in the water in Sarasota County, Florida. You know, this is not the first time we've run across stories like this, but thankfully this one does have a happy ending. According to a news release from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the agency responded to a request for help when a car drove off a seawall near the Albee Bridge on Saturday. Kelsey Dalton arrived on the scene around 6 o'clock in the evening, reportedly saw the car floating facing north in the Intercoastal Waterway. She then jumped into the water, swam over to the car. While she was doing that, there's a guy named Dominic Yaka, a retired Marine, who is now a bartender, who was just happened to be at the scene. He saw what was going on. He, too, jumped into the water. FWC said with the help of a Good Samaritan, they were able to smash the window with Dalton's baton and pull the driver, a 69-year-old man, out through the window. Dalton then grabbed her dive mask and returned to the vehicle to check for any passengers. Thankfully, there was nobody else in the car. Dominic Yaka spoke with WWSB a couple of days after the crash. He said, he was somebody's father, somebody's brother. He was somebody. And I said, I'm going to do the best that I can. We're not going to fail here. And he didn't. Thanks to the quick work of both Yaka and Dalton, the 69-year-old man, safe and sound other than minor scratches and bruises. He gets to celebrate Christmas with his family, and his family gets to celebrate Christmas with him. Thanks again to the quick thinking and the fast actions of Dalton and Yaka there in Sarasota County, Florida. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. I want to thank you for being a part of the program. As always, I hope that you have a very Merry Christmas. Now, we will be off for a couple of days next week. In fact, I was planning that this would be the last Cam and Company of the year, but that's not going to happen. We're actually going to do a show next Friday, and I am looking forward to taking part in a sort of a year-end wrap-up, right? We'll kind of talk about the big stories of the day, the challenges ahead in 2024. But I do want to remind you that right now, Town Hall Media has a great special going on. If you were looking for a last-minute Christmas gift, why not give the gift of a VIP or VIP Gold membership? That's right, 60% off if you use the promo code Merry Christmas, just all one word. Go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. 60% off the savings for a VIP or VIP Gold membership. Not only will you get exclusive content from those of us here at Bearing Arms, but if you are a VIP Gold member, you're going to get exclusive content across the Town Hall Media family of websites. You're going to get access to all kinds of great live chats, including our weekly live chat with Hot Airs Ed Morrissey, which we do each and every Wednesday. And you'll get the warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing that you're supporting the independent pro-segment of journalism that we do here at Bearing Arms. So again, just go to bearingarms.com/subscribe, use the promo code Merry Christmas, and you can get 60% off of your VIP or VIP Gold memberships between now through January 1st of 2024. We will see you next week with a year-end wrap-up edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. But in the meantime, again, hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Be well, be safe, and be free.